A recent report by PricewaterhouseCoopers says Nigeria accounts for over a third of migrant remittance flows to sub-Saharan Africa in 2018. This remittance flows amounted to about $23 billion and translate to 83% of the federal government's budget in 2018 and 11 times the foreign direct investment flows in the same period. The report also estimated that migrant remittances to Nigeria could grow to 25.5 billion, 29.8 billion, and 34.8 billion in 2019, that's this year, 2021, and 2023. With a surge in migration from the country, the remittance figure is expected to rise this year. But how well is the federal government tapping into this? Are there avenues that this remittances can be passed through to enhance the nation's economy? According to the the World Bank, an estimated $625 billion was sent by migrants to individuals in their home countries in 2017 worldwide, a 7% increase from 2016, when the amount was about $586 billion. This increase follows 2 consecutive years of decline. So, remittances move from across the world to individuals in the developing countries. At the end of the day, how does it impact the economies of those countries? To help us discuss this, we have the chief economist of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Dr. Andrew Nevin. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Joshua. Good morning.
And how are you today?
I'm doing my best. We've all struggled a bit in Lagos with the rain and the traffic and the accident.
But besides the rain, how's the rain?
The rain was incredible. I mean, it was just, you heard it all night. I mean, it kept me up a part of the night. And I was actually amazed how well traffic moved for a while, but I think the accident was the main thing.
And some of us will say that's the effect of climate change, because right now you can't even say when would it rain, when would it not rain. Predictability is low.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember being so late in the season. I thought that the rainy season was supposed to sort of come to an end, and it almost seems to be increasing. So,
But let's look at how that climate change is the rain. But in terms of predictability of the climate, we're finding it difficult to do that. But yet we're still able to predict economic trends in different countries. Let's look at foreign remittances to the African continent, Nigeria to be precise. You predicted in your report that it's likely to go up this year, 2021, 2023. On what basis did you?
Well, we know there's more and more people emigrating from Nigeria. I mean, the young professionals or even middle-aged professionals are choosing to leave. We've said that's a good litmus test of how some of the policies here are working. I know at our own firm at PwC, we lose people to Canada. So we have a group of diaspora that are getting more and more senior, so they have more resources that they're willing to send back. And we have a new group of diaspora coming. So the number's only going to increase. And despite some of the rhetoric around the world globally, politically, there's more and more people who live outside of their home country. 3% of people work where they were not born, the country they were not born. But I think it's critical for us to really recognize Africa's biggest export is people. And these people who have diaspora are what's supporting Africa. It's not foreign aid, it's not foreign direct investments, it's Africans supporting Africans.
But we keep talking about foreign direct investments coming into the country.
But just put the numbers on it. I mean, you think about, we need more foreign direct investment, but if we take foreign aid to Nigeria, it's only about $3 billion, and most of that really never hits Nigeria. It's never enters the country. Yet we have diaspora remittances that are $25 billion. So I think that I think sometimes people outside of Nigeria might think that foreign countries, developed countries, are supporting Nigeria. It's completely untrue. The people supporting Nigeria are the Nigerian diaspora.
And this is also considering the fact that some of these monies that are sent back actually are not recorded.
Well, I'm part of it, and maybe I don't know whether maybe the CBN is going to call me up. But most of the time, what I send, I'm paid in naira. When I need foreign, some pounds or Canadian dollars, I use a Boki system, or I have friends that I exchange with. And of course, if you think of Canada for a moment, we have 13,500 university students from Nigeria is the number I have in my head. So they need roughly $400 to $500 million US. and also we have a large number of professionals, Nigerian professionals in Canada. I expect most of the flow in Canada is actually probably happening informally.
Well, we're being joined by Dr. Vincent Nwani, who joins us via Skype. Dr. Vincent Nwani is a managing consultant of RTC Advisory Services. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Nwani.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Dr. Nwani, we've just talked about the issue of foreign remittances to the African continent, Nigeria to be precise, the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. Did you get to study that report?
Yes, I get to study the report, and it's a very exciting report, insightful report from PwC. As usual, we are very, very happy that we're having this type of report at this time, trying to lay credence to the fact that Nigeria is not the foreign exchange into Nigeria is actually being diversified now from core oil proceeds to other areas such as diaspora remittances. This is a very comforting information, and I think it is important more so because the policymakers should be able to take this report very seriously and see the type of policies they should be able to put in place to ensure that this credible source of revenue for development, for consumption, continue to flow. The foreign diaspora remittances is devoid of things like pollution that we are having from oil. Last year, I think we made about $18 billion from sale of crude oil. But Nigerians from living outside the country, in US and UK, contributed about 23-point-something billion dollars to this economy. This is very, very interesting. And I think it's a new eye-opener. Thank God that the federal government recently have created some different ministries or departments, and I think that this department should be able to focus on how they can maximize this new opportunity. Some other countries, such as Mexico, Egypt, India, they are leveraging on diaspora remittances to put their economy. In fact, diaspora remittances theoretically have shown that it has about 300% multiplier effect on investment in the recipient countries. I think these are some of the insights I want to mention now. Also, trying to ensure that we have to keep track of what is happening in other jurisdictions, especially the UK and the US. These two countries contribute, diaspora remittance flowing from these two countries is very huge. I think about 45%, just these two countries, followed by Italy. So whatever happens in these countries, economic opportunities, things about growth affects us directly. Also, having said that, we realize that issues such as skill now becomes very, very important. Since human now export more of human. What type of people are we exporting? Is it skilled, semi-skilled, or unskilled? Can we reform our educational sector? So these are some of the issues we need to begin to tackle and ensure that we maximize this new opportunity.
Okay.
Thanks to PwC again.
Okay.
It's important.
All right, Dr. Nwani. Thank you. We'll come back to you. Dr. Nevin, these figures, okay, so in 2017, Nigeria set up the Diaspora Commission. Now, in 2017 also, we had that increase in remittance from across the world back to the African continent. And indeed, it looks as if there was an increase, a 7% increase. So how well do you think the government's tracking that or even utilizing it?
Well, I think until we started talking about it, no one was really paying attention to it. I mean, if you think about the way we've always thought about the economy as an oil-driven economy, and as the doctor just said, I mean, the oil revenue is $18 billion for us, for the federal government of FX, foreign exchange. The diaspora remittances are $25 billion. No one really thought about it, so we put it out there. We were looking at this saying we don't think that Nigeria's biggest export is oil. Nigeria's biggest is people. So let's put that out there and make people. And of course, this coincided with upgrading the diaspora issue from that. You had Mrs. Dabiri was special assistant to the president. Now she's the DG of the commission. So that's a significant. So these things are sort of coming together, and I know that she and the commission are working hard on kind of, what are the next steps to take advantage of this, to strategically, because it's a massive resource for the country, and we need to do the right thing.
In the face of the conversations around increasing revenue, now that prediction that it will move from 23 to 25 billion, over 25 billion, would it be a question of tracking? How well is it being tracked? You know, I mentioned earlier that there are some of these remittances that are not even recorded. No.
Right. So those, I mean, if you have a peer-to-peer exchange, like I talked about before, so if I know someone that needs Naira and I send them Naira, and in Canada they send me Canadian dollars, that's not tracked at all, right?
Okay.
It's not even, it's a gray area. It's not sure how it's tracked. But I'm not sure the government should be looking at this as a source of revenue. I think they should be looking at it as a source of investment. So the question is how to create the vehicles for the investment. So the studies that have been done, DFID did a very good study, which says of the remittances to Nigeria, 70% of it goes for consumption. So people, they send money home for healthcare, for tuition fees, for construction, so for a house. So you don't want to impede that flow. People have gone abroad, they've made money, they want to support their family. That's critical. But they also want to invest 30% of it. So the question is, can the private sector and the federal government and states, which I'll come to in a moment, can they get together and create these vehicles to invest? Because it's not easy for the diaspora to invest meaningfully in Nigeria. So that's what we would like to see, is these investment vehicles created. But the other part of it is, if you go back, as the doctor said, I mean, you have other countries, Mexico, India, for example. A lot of their diaspora engagements happens at the subnational level, so in the Indian, the state level. So the states have their own engagement with the diaspora from that state, because people, I mean, they may be Nigerian, but they're also from Imo State, or they're from Lagos State, or they're from Kaduna State. So actually, we would like to see the states take a big part of the diaspora engagement so that they can get investment directly in their state. But then the projects have to be monitored. The diaspora needs to know that there's a good governance on it. But the states have a huge role to play in this.
Okay, Dr. Nwani, the question of the investment vehicles, what should government, especially Dr. Nevin just mentioned states now, states getting more involved in tracking these remittances, what kind of vehicles do you think should be in place to encourage this investment instead of just consumption?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you can hear me, and I'm not getting the question correctly, but I just to take it from what I heard, I believe that for us to maximize this new opportunity, we need to do certain things very quickly. We need to know the number of Nigerians living abroad. Where do they live? Where do they work? What do they do? So database is very, very important. I think that is the starting point. We need to create an active database of Nigerians living abroad to be able to track especially the legal ones, because of course a lot of things happen at the illegal level. Just like Dr. Nevin actually mentioned, we also need in Nigeria, state by state, local government by local government, to see how we can make some innovative platform for this investment to flow in. But we're already enjoying these potentials because it helps us to defend our foreign, our local currency. That is already a comfort coming in. We need to take it a little bit further so that it is not just money to sustain post consumption, take our aged mothers and fathers to the hospital. So we want to make sure that this money produce investment, great job, and that is the only way the economy will benefit. And that is already being done. If you go to states such as Edo State, you see people already forming cooperative, and I call it cooperative society of relatives, for people that have relatives living abroad, and a particular percentage of these remittances, flow into this fund so that it gets bigger, and you are able to use it to make some tangible investment in the SME sector. So I think these are informal initiatives. But I think it is time for us to begin to formalize this initiative. But the starting point is to create an active database and begin to incentivize Nigerians to come out and actually feed their data into this, feed the information into this database. Also having said that, it is important that Nigeria begins to create the type of story that will not just incentivize Nigerians living abroad, but our heritage. A lot of Nigerians or Nigerian-related people born abroad already doing good job. We need to also find a way to attract these people. 90% of Nigerians living abroad are either semi-skilled or skilled. So their capacity to earn, a lot of them are exploited in one way or the other in those countries which are faced of remittances or the volume of value received. In India, the remittance, foreign remittances is well over 100 billion. We are celebrating 23 point something billion, looking at 34 billion in 2025. But a journey of 1,000 miles starts in a day. We've started and we've recognized this as a major potential. I think the next thing is now for us to do to put in place the measures to make it sustainable. So I've spoke about database, also to train our people and create.
Okay, we lost Dr. Nwani there. We'll get back to Dr. Nwani when he's back. But let me come back to you, Dr. Nevin. The thing he talked about India's level of remittance, yeah, but I like what he said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one. Let's look at, there's this notion about some countries that strategically position their people, their citizens, more like export their citizens strategically so that the inflow is somewhat monitored. I know you talked about creating investment vehicles, but while we're creating the investment vehicles, which you look at, what investment vehicles would that need to be created, especially as regards data. He talked about data management, information inflow and outflow. The people out there need to know what's happening here, then they need to know what's coming to them at the end of the day. But that part about strategically positioning the citizens for export, how would that work?
Well, I'm not, yeah, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I think that maybe some countries like the Philippines and to some extent India, not so much as it's skilled labor, but in the unskilled labor that goes to the Middle East for construction have created these vehicles.
Some countries invest in terms of education of their citizens abroad,
right,
and then position them in different.
But I'm not sure we should be going down that path. To be honest, I'd like to see the diaspora come back to Nigeria and contribute here. But to the extent that we are where we are, they're hugely important for the economy. But where I agree with Dr. Nwani is that I think the database aspect's critical. And it was very interesting. I was at the Nigeria Diaspora event in Paris a few weeks ago. And there's a technology that uses, that actually can identify the names and what ethnic group they're basically from. So actually, I think that the National Diaspora Commission needs to get this, because what you need to do is take like the database of doctors in the United States and then pull out who are effectively Nigerians by their name and down to their state of origin, because this technology can do that, and then start to strategically do that. So we take the doctors, the engineers, other professionals, and piece together that level of diaspora. We can start to then strategically do it. But I'm not sure we should educate Nigerians to go abroad. I'd like to see Nigerians educate them to come back and stay here. But I would like to see, I mean, two things. One is the state governors get involved. I mean, Mrs. DeBerry is already doing this, and she's on her path. I want to see the state governors start to take an interest in this, as I said, because I think that's the level at which it's going to have an impact on that. Also, with respect to our kind of FX, foreign exchange policy, I think the CBN should be taking more interest in this. And I mean, of course, we've had a stable market exchange rate of 360 for 4 years, almost 4 years now, really to the Kobo, right? To the 360, 360, 360. The reason that we're able to hold this exchange rate is because of these diaspora remittances. So we import, visible imports in Nigeria are about $40 billion US dollars a year. Where do we get the $40 billion if we're only getting 18 billion through the oil proceeds that come to the country? Where's the rest of it? It's coming from these diaspora remittances. And so I think that the CBN also needs to take a strategic view of it. So that's why we've been able to accumulate reserves while holding the exchange rate at 360. But it also just shows you how critical it is, because really, in a way, we run two parallel foreign exchange regimes. 90% of our hard exports, goods exports, are oil. that all flows through the NMPC, and the CBN centralizes that. The reason that we haven't paid attention to the diaspora flows, even though they're bigger, is it's highly decentralized. It's going to millions of individual Nigerians. So there's no tracking mechanism at that level. And I think that there should be some strategic thinking of how do you kind of mesh these flows so we have more of an integrated FX market. And also, and of course, we've been advocates of liberalizing the exchange rate. I mean, basic economics where we stand, that would tell you that the Naira would not crash because we have these diaspora flows that would hold up the Naira.
Some people might be frowning at you for saying that the Naira will not crash if
it would appreciate sort of standard economic thinking. What's happening is we're accumulating reserves from 23 billion up to 48 billion. While holding exchange rate fixed. That's because we're having more inflows of dollars. I mean, we all get text messages from our banks telling us they have dollars available, right? You wouldn't be getting those text messages in a country where there was a shortage of dollars. So in a country like Turkey, you don't get those text messages. Yeah. There's enough dollars, there's enough foreign exchange in Nigeria to do what we need to do. But the foreign exchange is coming from the diaspora.
But the question that some people, some laymen will ask is, how much of that inflow is affecting the loaf of bread that the man on the roadside is wanting to buy? How much of that inflow, how much of this exchange rate conversation is affecting the man? Because at the end of the day, it's about how the economy affects that man on the street.
It's a good question, but we've been clear on this. I mean, what's driving inflation in this country, or driving that, not even inflation, but the high cost of things, is largely infrastructure. So, we all drive around Lagos. Even the Lagos roads, which is meant to be the wealthiest part of Nigeria, are in very bad condition in many places, right? We lose so much productivity through a papa. Those things are driving up the cost. If we want to bring down the cost of a loaf of bread, so if you visit India, Indian goods and services are perhaps a quarter of the price of a developed world. So then you can have wage rates that are also lower, but the system works. But they're highly efficient. The infrastructure is in good shape in most cases. That's what we need to focus on if we want to bring down the rate of inflation, bring down the food cost for the man on the street. So you go back to agriculture, all these agricultural supply chains, lots of work going on in the country. How do you get tomatoes from the field into the tin so people can use it at a reasonable price? I mean, we lose half the tomatoes from the field to the... So I don't want to distract that conversation by saying it's the FX thing that's affecting that. Mainly what's affecting it.
But it could help.
I mean, it's not...
Because we're looking at investment vehicles now. So investment in infrastructure.
Absolutely. So if we could create something that the diaspora felt was well managed, was transparent, had excellent governance, and it made, they were going to get a return, we could get a much bigger flow. The diaspora would invest in that.
Okay. Dr. Nwani, the matter of investment vehicles again, investment by the diaspora and in the Nigerian infrastructure, would that help in any way? Let's look at in particular roads. I mean, Dr. Nevin talked about how the issue of road movement from one point to the other could affect the economy negatively, and indeed is affecting the economy negatively. How would that help if the commission, for instance, said, okay, you know what, dear diaspora Nigerians, you could actually invest in road infrastructure, and these are the returns that will come to you if you do that. We'll do a PPP to help build our roads. How would that work?
Yes, we've already answered partially. I tell you that we need to be effective and innovative, and we have to take this activity to a level of emotion and passion. Look, Nigerians are very passionate, and I want to give you an example. If you say create like a diaspora fund 1 or diaspora fund 2, and you say that this fund 1 is going into construction or finishing of the second Niger bridge. This is an emotional project for every diasporan person that lives in from the southeast region of this country. I can assure you that within 60 days, this fund will be oversubscribed, and ensure that, okay, it's coming without, any, it's not taxable, any return from it, and, just make it very transparent and create it such that this proceed is going straight to the project. You make it independent. Maybe you have a corporate organization that manages that for the process of that fund and that project with timelines and everything. I can tell you that Nigerians will invest in it. Remember about 10 or 12 years ago, when India was having serious foreign exchange problem. They reached out to about 5,000 diaspora Indians living in UK, living in US, and elsewhere. And within 90 days, they were able to generate about 100 billion US dollars, for specific projects and investments. So I'm saying, let's be a little bit emotional about this thing. Create a fund that can clean up Apapa. People that are emotional about that will quickly invest in all those. Immediately they see something like transparency, something that is a little bit independent of government management, that looks like a corporate, I can say corporate or private sector centric or private sector driven. Nigeria, if you go abroad, you find out that they are ready to invest in Nigeria. You see a lot of them even lamenting that the money they've sent to just build maybe a private or small commercial building was siphoned by even a friend or family member. So they are looking for something more transparent, more legitimate, but we need to be creative. And this is the time to begin to involve advisors, such as my friend in the studio, Dr. Nevin. And we have good investment banks in the country to structure this type of arrangement. But like I said before, charity begins at home. And as we're all doing this, how much are we also preserving the local economy? Because we still need experts here. Countries such as Canada, over the last few years, is aggressively picking our very qualified technicians and the IT in medicine, medical sciences, and elsewhere. You see a lot of migration. But if we're a little bit creative, we'll be able to create balance between diaspora and remittances, the inflow into investment and key infrastructure, make it more emotional, but we have to create database and begin to incentivize Nigerians to see that we are ready to do business. Diaspora remittances of this sort rides on trust. Nigerians, our government need to create an atmosphere of trust that they will be believed in, and this money will come in. Even some people that are not even Nigerians will invest through Nigerians, their friends and their colleagues abroad. It's a very big country. This is a country that has well over 10 million people living abroad. Last year or so, about 1.something million Nigerians left this country. These are official data. So we have a huge community to actually leverage on now and moving forward.
Okay. Dr. Nevin, well, reports, unofficial reports, say there are about 15 million Nigerians living abroad. Let's look at the US, where it's reported at about $22,107 per immigrant. Now, if we look at that, what Dr. Nwani talked about, he says a fund that these Nigerians can invest in. I know that the PwC report recommended pooled investment vehicles. Is that the same thing that he's talking about?
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, there's different ways to structure it. And you don't have to have just one fund or multiple funds, but there needs to be something structured or more than one fund structured to tap into this.
But in terms of the question I alluded to earlier was information, data inflow and outflow. How would that work to encourage this diasporans to come in?
Well, I mean, I think the fund has to be totally transparent, right? So you set up a fund. Here are the objectives, here's the amount of money, here's who runs the fund, here's the governance of the fund, here's how it reports, and have that totally
almost
transparent.
Completely independent of government.
Well, I think we have said it largely needs to be private sector driven. I mean, if you think of the board, for example, running the fund, there might be one or two government people, but even we have this already in the country. So if you go to the...
Just hold your thoughts. We have this already in the country. We'll pick it up from there and we'll come back from this break. Please join us again. Welcome back. We're still talking about diaspora remittances into the country. And Dr. Nevin, you were talking about we need to pick it up from here.
Right. So in Nigeria, we already have the National Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, right, which is a government agency, but is basically totally private sector led. I think there's only one or two representatives of the government on the board on it, and the employees will come from the private sector. And of course, they're very focused on how do we tap into pension funds, et cetera, for investment in infrastructure. So that's an example of a government organization that's really private sector led. So now we talk about diaspora funds. Our view is these should be private sector led. So you might, again, you might have a board where you have maybe Mrs. DeBerry as part of the board, but I don't think, not to be critical of the federal government, but I don't think that a government-led diaspora fund is necessarily going to give the confidence to the diaspora to put their money into Nigeria.
Your firm, PwC, a lot of people, I'm sure there are very few people that understand, or quite a number don't know that PwC is a local firm.
Yes.
And whenever you talk, you personalize whatever you say about being here. But then someone will look at you and say, this is not a Nigerian citizen, so you won't know what we're going through. So I would like to find out, how personal is this to you?
Well, I mean, I've been here for more than a decade. I'm paid in Naira. I've got a mortgage at 21%. I pay for my own car. I pay for my own housing. I mean, this is where I live. And we were talking about Nigerians going to Canada. I mean, we have Nigerian professionals. After 3 years, they're citizens, they're Canadian citizens, and we welcome that. I mean, I don't have citizenship here. It's not so easy to get in Nigeria, but this is my home. And to be honest, when I leave Lagos, I'm unhappy. When I arrive back, I'm happy. So, I have nowhere to go if Nigeria doesn't succeed.
So, if Dr. Nwani, that vehicle that we're talking about, getting the states, the local governments to buy into this investment vehicles, pooled investments, that's just one. There are many other vehicles that can be created for investment. How quickly do you think it will be to get it to the grassroots? Because about 70% of the monies that come from abroad actually go to the grassroots for consumption. So how quickly can we get those in the grassroots to buy into this and even begin to invest as well?
Thank you very much. The issue is that even the statement that first recognized the importance of remittance. Like I thought initially, some parts of the country, Edo State, besides, it's already some like corporate agreement. People in Nigeria abroad. So when this money comes, the remittances, a particular person in that, sometimes they are to maybe 10. This can carry this money, they pull it together. It's flow to consumption. Some of them have used it to start bread, around the house and everything. Initiative that the poor have been able to put in place. So it's now trying to formalize this type of initiative and see how we can take it up and make it more sustainable. So we have to copy it and develop it more. So, like I said before, I'm not expecting Nigerians Diaspora to fly into form this. We're not expecting to fly into great investment channels at local government, level, at community level, at state level. Need to move from. But I believe the federal government is doing a really good job now. Let's replicate that, especially states have a huge number of citizens, but especially the Edo State is a key example. Imo State, Anambra State, these states have huge number of Nigerians that live abroad. Of them also do very good job. So like I said before, it's a journey of 1,000 miles starts. I need to formalize what is already and moving it from cooperative arrangement to something like microfinance arrangement and targeting certain level of investment.
Okay, all right. Dr. Nevin, as we begin to wind down, let's look at what can be done real quick. Low-hanging fruits that can be plucked and get this thing going.
Well, the number one thing we'd like to see in the short term is the state governors start to build a database.
Like what's happening in Edo State?
Edo State. So we're big fans of Governor Obaseki in Edo State. I mean, they have a fantastically successful diaspora. And I think the governors need to start to build this database. I think maybe we can play a role in creating a platform that's so that every state doesn't have to duplicate the platform. They can all use the same platform, but it's their own data. So it would be a database of their diaspora, mapping the diaspora. It would be a place that the diaspora can engage with the state. And then eventually that's also the platform where you would put on projects that would attract funding. So that's what we'd like to see the starting point. I think Mrs. DeBerry is going to be announcing a big strategy soon. if I understand what's happening at the Commission, we'll look forward to that. But this thinking of the diaspora flows will definitely be incorporated into her thinking for the Diaspora Commission at the federal government level.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Andrew Nevin is the Chief Economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you for sharing your thoughts
Very
with us.
welcome.
We also had Dr. Vincent Nwani, who's the Managing Consultant at RTC Advisory Services. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we'll be back in a moment. I'll be looking at the mental health issues. Join us again.